2 years is average. When they start getting that feeling, they're like, okay, I'm trying to make things work at work, but it's not working out. What do I do? So they think the methodical, logical path is to figure out what I want to do going forward before I quit. And they think they'll figure it out by DIYing and Google search and now ChatGPT.
Yeah, true.
On their laptop. And that doesn't work.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AUD podcast channel. We have a very special guest with us today, Ms. Samia Hasan. Samia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Samia, as I said, I've been connected with you for about a year, following your content. I know you spoke at the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival last year, and I believe the work you're doing now is more important than ever. With everyone going through transitions in career, in life, there's so much uncertainty going on. No one's married to their professions as they used to be. So I know you're the founder of Unwind, and you're a career and leadership coach that focuses, what I like is you focus on millennials and Gen Z, and you're trying to provide a learning development platform. So what I wanted to do today is kind of go through that process of transition, the challenges that come with it. I want to hear about your story when you made your transition from corporate to, launching your own business, because I think there's so many useful pieces of information there. A lot of people talk about the what, not about the how. So I'd like today to be almost like a masterclass in these are the steps you need to take in each of these things to move forward. But before we get into all of that, Samia, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me in the show. So I did my MBA in marketing, and I was very clear-headed and had my eye on the prize that I want to work for an FMCG multinational company. And I got a job at P&G, Procter & Gamble, which is a Fortune 50 company. I worked there for 10 years in brand management and marketing. And it was great. The great learning journey. It was a lot of growth, a lot of exposure, a lot of accountability. But we evolve in life. And as we evolve, our interests, our passions, our strengths, what we want to do evolves. And we need to realize at some point that this career that I wanted at one time is not serving me anymore, and I don't want to do this. And sometimes people are just on autopilot, and then the responsibilities and life and finances and family, all of this gets in the way, and then you are left with, okay, I don't know how I can pivot, how I can transition. And I found myself at the same place because amazing company, the only job I ever had for 10 years.
Wow.
And that's all I knew. Those people were the only people I knew. And so when I had my daughter, I thought I'm going to take a nice 6-month maternity break and figure everything out and maybe launch my own business and, figure out what to do with my career next. And turns out 6 months passed like this.
I'm sure
and I
they
went
did.
back to the corporate world, and I'm like, okay. So I did 1 year after maternity, and I was not enjoying it. That was it. I think having a daughter, and I'm a very hands-on mom, gave me the realization that, okay, I'm very career-minded. I want to do something in my career, but if I'm going to leave my daughter for all these hours at a nursery or daycare, then what I do with my life, with my career, has to be meaningful. It has to be purposeful. It dialed it up so much that I couldn't, again, go back and make the same slide decks and present to the same senior management and do the whole corporate thing. So then I was like, okay, what do I do now? The good thing was that I had built enough financial safety net, and I had a vision that, okay, I don't know exactly what it is, but it has to be something around people development. So from brand development, I was moving towards people. Now, what would it be? It could be teaching, consulting, coaching, counseling, therapy. I was like, I'll give myself some time to figure that out. So I quit with no plan. The only plan was to see a coach, which is what I did, and to take a sabbatical, which I never did. Okay. But I saw a coach, so I got first-hand experience of what coaching is. I found it super transformative, the whole experience of really delving deep into who you are, finding the answers yourself, really going on this journey where you are charting a path for yourself based on who you are. And I felt like this is something I want to enable other people to do as well. P&G, was a very young company. The average age in our BU was 27 already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
quite young. Okay.
And already by that time, people were starting to feel like, sort of, okay, is this what I want to do for the long term? Gen Z were not even in the workforce then, it was just millennials. But I was getting a lot of questions of, okay, how did you go about this and how do we find clarity on career paths? I was like, okay, then maybe this target audience, and I'm a millennial myself, is something I can work with, something who are more relatable, they can be inspired by my journey. And of course, coming from marketing background, I had to have a niche. I had to have a target audience.
Yeah.
So then I just went on and did my coaching certifications. I did NLP practitioner course, ICF coaching, kept on doing it for the last 8 years, lots of coaching programs, and I became a coach.
Okay, very interesting story. So what I wanted to just touch on that transition period to start with, because you were in corporate for so long, and after you had your daughter, you were off for 6 months, then you went back and you're like, this is just not fitting me anymore, and I want to make more use of my time if I'm going to leave my daughter behind. But like you said, important thing you said is like you left without a plan. So how long would you say was the transition, like on a mental perspective, from when you went back and you're like, because I think this is what happens to a lot of people. You get that inkling, like that wave starts inside you, like, I don't know how much I'm enjoying this now. But the time from that to like making a change or leaving can be quite significant.
Yeah.
So, and time is a very important thing, whether it's with coaching, whether it's with growth, so that is an important factor that we have to take into account. So if I came to you and I started to feel those things in my job, because I think if I can accelerate that process from that feeling to, moving on and trying something different, probably saves me a lot of time and a lot of headache.
Yeah, and I tell my clients the only way to do that is through action. Clarity and courage both come from action. You can't just think your way into it. So obviously people don't have time, right? They already have a full-time job, which is demanding, obviously, if you're in this part of the world. And then you're not left with enough time for even family and your chores and your health and fitness, let alone to start a side hustle or to figure out how to go about things. So typically, and even for myself, I was 3-4 years in that state.
Wow.
When I had that inkling, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what I want to do. Of course, it aggravates over time, and then when it really gets unbearable, you're like, okay, I will leave even without a plan. But then for people, 2 years is average. When they start getting that feeling, they're like, okay, I'm trying to make things work at work, but it's not working out. What do I do? So they think the methodical, logical path is to figure out what I want to do going forward before I quit, and they think they'll figure it out by DIYing and Google search and now ChatGPT.
Yeah, true.
On their laptop, and that doesn't work. So for instance, even with their day job, what they could do is start talking to people. Simple stuff, right? So if you don't know what career you want to pivot into, start with what you have and start with what sparks your curiosity. What other fields, what other industries, what other line of work, what other people that you want to be like, that interest you. Talk to them. What do you do? How's day-to-day work for you? How's your company? How's the culture? The more of these conversations you're going to have, you're actually researching, right? With real people who have those real jobs. And then it will give you, curiosity will give you information, learning, you will start growing your network, and then you will feel like, oh, okay, I have now all of this information and knowledge, I can do something with it. And definitely work with a coach. It's
it does, honestly, it really does accelerate that process. And so over the last month, I've hired 2 coaches. So one's like an executive coach and one's a YouTube coach for different reasons.
Of course.
And what I realized is I'm a person who believes you have all the answers, like in your head somewhere. But after a certain amount of, I think you should first, my philosophy, you can tell me if I'm wrong. My philosophy is I will try to figure it out myself first. And if I can't figure it out, I will get a coach. Now, the other side of that equation is, why waste all your time and effort if you can hire someone and that can accelerate the process? What I learned with my coach is they will show you blind spots that you have. With like, I learned about my business, some of the mistakes I was doing, and once it became clear, I'm like, oh my God, how did I not see this? How did I not know? So could you just walk me through those early years of the coaching that you were doing? What were the challenges you were facing? Because as a coach, you're kind of coaching yourself too. I'm coaching you, but through this experience, I'm learning. I'm like, I see some of these things in this person in me. These are some of the things that I'm challenging with. Now I have to go and fix these so I can deliver better value to clients. So could you walk us through those early years of coaching?
Sure. I'll get into that. But before that, the point you mentioned on when to get a coach and when to DIY, and on that one, I think there's a misconception because people who haven't tried coaching don't know what it is and what it does. They think coaching, like consulting perhaps, is going to bridge an information gap. So there's some information out there that they don't know of, and the coach is going to come and tell you that. Now, perhaps for a YouTube coach, that might be true because it's business coaching. It's more around, this is what drives, engagement, blah, blah. But a coach, or any other coach, a relationship coach, life coach, career coach, works with you. And that's a part of internal information, internal self-discovery, not just external information. Now, where does that internal information you are kind of blinded by, like you mentioned blind spots, is when you have limiting beliefs that are getting in the way of you moving ahead. And anytime you are going through change in life, at work, these limiting beliefs are going to be heightened. Our brain is hardwired to protect us from fear. So anytime you're feeling scared, you're feeling fearful, all the beliefs are going to show up. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I will never be able to get there. And then even your own strengths are kind of crippled because you're not using them in the optimal way. So what a coach does is help you see those beliefs, unpack those beliefs, and rewire them to positive, empowering beliefs so you can perform at your best, which sometimes you can't do for yourself. That's why me as a coach, I always have a coach.
Exactly. There you go.
Because you need that. Anytime you want to elevate, step up, go to the next level, you need that. Now, early days, yes, it's a learning journey.
I'm sure.
Even especially coming from, so I had a senior director level position at P&G. I was leading a big team. When you lead and manage people, we like to use the term coach, but we're not really coaching. We're directing, leading, mentoring, telling them what to do. It's not coaching in the right essence. So unlearning all of that and then taking the coach training and learning what coaching is, how to practice it, how to step back, not get in their way or in their story, how to listen, how to hold the space. So learning all of these tools were essential. And I think they've made me a better person. You know how sometimes people say that, okay, my profession is getting in the way of being the person that I want to be. My profession in the last 8 years actually enabled me to become a better person, a person who can have more empathy, more compassion, more tolerance, listen more, no judgment, safe space, all of that. So I think those coaching skills are life skills, and they really help you personally and professionally.
No, 100%. I could not agree with you. Could not agree with you more. It's funny you brought up limiting beliefs. So I had a guest on my podcast a few days ago, and the whole conversation was about kind of what we're talking about right now, about limiting beliefs and how they show up in periods of transition. One thing that she said, and you've kind of touched on it, is you need to unlearn a lot of things. And she was saying, as you transition to a new career, a new season, as you like to call it, of your life, you need to unbecome that old person. The challenge in that is not just the beliefs that you have to deal with. It's, I feel at least I went through, and I think a lot of people do, there's an identity crisis that you kind of go through. Like, I'm Khalid, I am the guy who speaks like this, does this, whatever. And now through this change, I'm having to let go of that. But then you start thinking, well, people still like that this new version of me. Is this who I really am? What do I like? Not I dislike. So could you touch on the identity aspect? Because that also is tied into, as we're going to get into, jobs, titles, careers, all of that.
I'll give my own example. I didn't know who I was without P&G.
Well,
10 years, one company, that was the only thing. It was a school. It taught me everything. I became who I am. I would go to networking events and I say, oh yeah, I just quit P&G. And I was like, oh, P&G. And then, okay, coaching. What is coaching? Sports coach? Well, like, back in the day, of course, people didn't know. So I was like, okay, who am I? And you can only rely on that brand name for a couple of months. It's not like it's going to stay with you forever. So I think when we attach a lot of importance to our external factors, like our job and title and our car and where we live and all of that, then the identity crisis is bound to happen because you don't know who you are at your core. And what coaching does is the first thing it does is get you back in touch with who you are, what you value, who you are as a person. And anytime then you go through a transition, you build from that person. And I think that's the thing that is permanent, right? Because everything else is transient. As you spoke earlier about, careers are seasonal. You're not married to your career. You're not married to your job. So then who are you married to? yourself.
Yeah,
You are your own brand, and this brand, as it grows and evolves and takes whatever shape, is the one that is going to take you through season after season of every career change and pivot and transition that is going to come your way.
So as you just said, the first step into finding or discovering who you are is finding your why. And your why, as you've put it from my research, that's the first step to success in any journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting from your experience, from my experience, from a lot of people's experience, everyone talks about finding their why, but I also think, just reflecting on my story, I'm like, but your why also is seasonal. Your why also changes. And I don't think that's talked about enough. They think like, oh, I found my why, that's it, and this is my why for the rest of my life. So if there's so much work I need to put into finding my why, I think there are different levels to it. There's the why of this is why I want to pursue this venture, this career, this new job. And the deeper one, though, is the one that I think you learned through your experience doing now what you do, is like the core that no matter what vehicle or season I'm in, this is the underlying thing behind that. But I don't think people talk about the differences enough.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes these concepts are taken and made so simplistic, and in effort of doing that, you're actually making it difficult for people.
Thank
and I'll
you
tell
very
you
much.
how. Like you said, when you have that one big why that you have to find, it's daunting. Because what if I don't know and I'm lost and I have multiple whys and I'm a multi-talented and passionate person who's interested in so many things? So why limit yourself to only one why and think of that as a permanent thing and building everything around that? Give it more fluidity and flexibility to evolve. Yes, your why can be one thing for now, but the way it manifests itself could be different in different seasons of your life. I'll tell you, for instance, I discovered 8 years ago with my coach, when I started my coaching journey, that my why is that I enable people, I help people to see who they are and enable them to achieve what they're capable of.
Okay.
Right? So really diving deep and helping a person see who they really are and achieving their true potential. Now, this can be done in so many different ways.
True.
Right now, in my current season, I'm doing it through career and leadership coaching, but maybe 5 years from now, who knows, I'll be doing it through retreats and more experiential and immersive stuff. And this is broad, and I feel this is what drives me. So definitely your why is your guiding light. Your why is something that is true to who you are, and I feel it's a gift that is given to you by God that is truly unique to your capabilities.
Yeah.
And then how you bring it to life, because then there's the why, the what, and the how, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How you bring it to life in different seasons and stages of your life is totally up to you.
Yeah. One thing I love how you touched on, there's an underlying one, but it shouldn't be something that's fixed. It should be something flexible that can be projected or shown in lots of different ways, different careers, different seasons, different types of relationships, and so on. I wanted to come back for a second to the corporate world, because I've watched a lot of your content on YouTube, and I was watching it was very interesting to me, because I was reflecting on the lessons that you're talking about. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly how I felt, and that's the thing. So when it comes to the corporate world, you talked on, I reflecting on my experience, very quickly I realized this is not for me. And two things that I learned that you touched on were, it's not results, you're only as good as your last performance evaluation. And more importantly, that I learned as well is your perception at work is more important than the results that you have, because you will be forgiven for those. But I think that people, when we're in corporate jobs, you just focus on, I don't care what people think about me and so on. I just need to do my job, deliver results. But I've learned also, even if I deliver the results, doesn't give me job security, doesn't mean that you're going to be, promoted. So I think people don't talk about the importance of the perception. The results are important, but the perception seems to have a bigger weight.
Absolutely. And fortunately, we have research on this. So there's a model which is called PI. PI meaning P stands for performance, I for image, and E for exposure.
Okay.
And research done about 20, 30 years ago says that performance accounts for only 10% of your success in the organization.
Only 10%?
Only 10%. Image 30%, exposure 60%. Of course, if you're a new hire, you've just graduated and entered, performance will be a bit more, because your learning curve is steep, you have a lot to learn. But in general, performance performance is 10, image is 30, exposure is 60. So
Wow.
image is how people see you, your brand, your perception, and exposure is how many people know about you, your visibility. And that is where we start, even like when people are switching jobs and, the first 30, 60, 90-day plan I'm working with them on. How do you want your brand to be in the next 6 months? Who are your important stakeholders that you want your brand to be visible to? How will you get there? What exactly are you going to be working on, the projects that are aligned to the business goals that will give you that visibility? All of these things. And it's a little technical, it's a little bit of a chore. It doesn't come naturally to people because you'd be like, okay, all these 20 years of my educational academic life, I was told, study hard, do well, get good grades, and you're going to make it to the college and the uni. And then now I'm like, okay, those good grades don't matter anymore. Exactly. So the formula has changed. And yes, the performance, it's not like performance does not matter. Of course, it's like the lowest common denominator. So it has to be there. It's not like you're going to be performing poorly and just because you have a good brand, you can cut it. No. But then everybody has performance. So then how are you going to differentiate yourself?
Yeah.
And that's where, brand and image and how you project yourself and how you're intentional about what you want to stand for. And if we look at it in a positive way, it's a good thing. It links back to what we're saying about identity and coaching and what it helps you with, right? So the personal branding exercise we do is the same. What are your values? What are your strengths? What are your skill sets? What is the brand you want to have in the next 6 months? And then you work backwards. What do you want people to say about you? If you want them to say that she's proactive, she's a go-getter, okay, how will you deliver on that? So it's just working with an end in mind and then having a plan to get there, not just being on autopilot and let things flow the way they're flowing and we'll figure it out in 6 months.
So it's interesting that you talk about have a plan for the kind of brand that you want to have and then you work your way backwards. I think when you're in a corporate, when you're making a transition or you're starting your own business or so on, this resonates with you quite easily, quite clearly. I think where there's a disconnect is listening to that. People should be doing that. You should actively be doing that in your job from day one. Like your personal brand should be something that you're building alongside working in this corporate job, so that not only gives you that visibility, but also would probably open you to a lot more opportunities. You said being at the right place at the right time in a job. The people who are working on the brand are the ones that are getting those. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if it's something that doesn't come to you naturally, because of course there's workload and timelines and projects, and you get into the thick of things, into the weeds, and you're not sort of stepping back and looking at a big picture, take this as an opportunity at least once a quarter to reflect and do that.
Once a quarter?
At least.
Okay.
At least. Of course, once you start a new job, a new assignment, even changing a business unit or a team and doing that, but at least once a quarter. Why? And we always need to find a motivation or something that helps us do that thing, right?
Sure.
Don't link it to work first, link it to yourself. Every quarter, I'm going to take stock of myself, of what I've learned, who I am, my skills, all of it, for my life, for who I am as a person. So start there. Work will chip in later. Work is a big part of our life. It's integrated, right? We can't separate the two.
Yeah.
So think about it from a life perspective. Let's say in a new role, now it's been a year, now you're getting into your second year and there are some new projects and it's going to be more demanding. Okay, in this 1 year, what did I learn? What skills did I gain? What did I not do so well? What I could improve? Who am I as a person as a result of this learning, this experience, being with these people? And take a stock of all of these things and then say, okay, this is who I am and I like it. Now, in the second year, next level, in my life and work, I want to be this person.
Yeah.
I want to elevate,
Yeah.
right? The way we do our year-end reflections and New Year resolutions, pretty much like that. It's just a very introspective, reflective exercise.
Yeah, and like you said, this needs to be a continuous process. I think 3 months, even in whether it's personal growth or business growth, I think 3 months is a very nice digestible time frame to set some reasonable small goals to move yourself forward and a good time to reflect. It's a nice amount of time. It's not too long. You're not thinking too far back. Now, I wanted to, so you've talked about how, we've kind of touched on corporate, the feeling when you want to leave, the importance of finding your why, the different levels of it and so on. So I wanted to talk now of that transition phase. So now we decided, okay, we are ready. We don't want to be here anymore. Now we need to transition to either a business or something else. You've said to transition successfully, the 3 things you need are clarity, brand, and work. So could you walk me through a step-by-step process of what are the questions I need to be asking myself to get that clarity about my brand and about my work, and we'll take it over from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before even you get to the clarity, brand, and network,
network.
The first question you need to ask yourself in terms of realistic logistical stuff is how much financial safety net or cushion I have in terms of time, because that will dictate the plan for clarity, brand, and network. Let's say somebody has saved up enough that even if they don't make reasonable or considerable money for 2 years, they're fine. Their plan of clarity, brand, network will be very different versus someone who only has 6 months. So that's two very different perspectives.
Very true.
Someone who's married and has 3 kids, even with whatever savings they have, school fees and expenses and all of that will be very different versus somebody who is single and young and more, let's say, prone to take risks and open to relocation as well, and they can move. So all of these practical things is the first step we start with. Actually, it is part of clarity because it gives you clarity.
Sure.
It's what I call it's criteria. So I ask them, what are the factors that are most important to you that need to be present in your next season of your career? And I limit that season to the next 2 to 3 years because that's really practical. Like that next block of like next gig or whatever you want to do. And these factors sound like money, learning, growth, impact, people, culture, all of those things. Again, slightly different if people are looking to start their own business versus if they're looking to be in the corporate world. And then you rank those in order of priority. And any decision you make going forward, once you have the clarity of what you want to do, is going to be assessed based on this criteria. So if somebody says money, impact, and let's say people is my criteria, you can't be then going into a career that is not paying enough because it doesn't meet your money criteria. Now, all of these things are in people's head, but it's not put down on paper in a very step-by-step, like structured way. So then they are in their head and thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
Very
so then we peel the onion on, okay, why this criteria? What does impact mean? Everybody has their own definition of impact and meaning and purpose. So that's where we start.
Okay.
And that sort of lays the path of what is important to you, and now we are going to build the career around these factors.
So that's like laying the foundation.
Laying the
that
foundation,
exercise.
step 1, exactly.
Yeah.
Step 2 is then your GPV, gifts, passions, values.
Okay.
So gifts, of course, are your strengths. I'm a Gallup strengths-based coach, so I work with the Gallup Strengths.
Oh, really? I've taken that test.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
What are your top strengths?
I can't remember what it was because it was a while ago because I like doing these kind of tests. But it told me it's like you're a strategic thinker. That's what it told me. And in my head, I was just like, I've never thought of myself as a strategic. It was a new label that I wasn't used to.
Yeah,
but anyway,
it's just different language and words. Yeah.
Exactly.
But just from how you talk, I can relate to that and I can resonate with their results that you are a strategic thinker. It's very obvious in the way you're asking questions, structured. There's thought put into it. So.
Well, thank you. I'm top of your coach is giving me that validation. I feel so good. So we were talking. So thank you for that. By the way, I appreciate it.
So gifts are strengths. No worries. Gifts are your strengths, and then we work on strengths are, again, technical and behavioral strengths, what you're good at. Passion is what you love to do. Passion is usually a tricky one because people aren't sure. They're passionate about a lot of things, which is great. So with passion, I always say we do a lot of conscious and subconscious exercises. What that means is you're thinking from your conscious mind, but then 90% of your thoughts, your decisions, your emotions are coming from your subconscious. So we find a way to tap into subconscious, either through visualizations, through embodiment work, through meditation, and deep breathing work, and we get our answers from there, especially for passion, because it's not top of mind. If it was, then they would have not come to me and done it themselves.
100%.
So here we just stay flexible. Okay. Go back to a time when you felt really happy. What are the things that you really love to do? Lots of different questions and exercises around it. And values are values. So values are your moral compass, something that guides you. 3 questions that I usually ask around values, and I follow the Brené Brown value model, and I really love the work that she does. She's amazing. So your value is who you are at your best. It's something that really defines you, and something that if it's violated, you're not going to be okay with. So it's a good way to think about it like this, that is this something that defines me, and is it who am I at my best? Is this a filter I use to make tough decisions? And if this value is violated, would I be okay with it? And then, of course, we have a list of values and then the choose and stuff. So we do this. Of course, fears and limiting beliefs are coming up as we do all of this because we are trained to notice the language, the words people use. So sometimes when they are using the same limiting words over and over again, then we will get into it. And taking note of all the fears that are showing up and getting deeper into those fears and rewiring those fears. So that rewiring might look like a deep embodiment session where you're really unlocking trauma from your body. It might look like positive affirmations where you're trying to hack into your neuroscience mind and rewire it with something more positive. It might look like going out there and acting and talking to people and gaining evidence from that action that you've done that restores your confidence. Different things at different time. So that's the clarity phase, and then it's a lot of deep internal work. Of course, skills are part of it, your experience are part of it. By the end of it, you have a mapping of all of these things: criteria, gifts, passions, values, skills, the kind of environment you want to work in, the kind of impact you want to make, and your goals. So we do all of this mapping, and based on this exercise, we come up with your personal ethos, which is your 4 or 5 lines of, okay, this is who I am, distilling all of this. So you diverge, and then you converge, and come up with that beautiful 4 or 5 lines ethos. And then based on that, they take their time, sleep over it, think about it, talk to people, and decide, okay, what are the 1 or 2 potential career paths that are showing up for you that line up with who you are. And at this point, obviously, there's sometimes a bit of lack of information. So do you want to bridge that information gap, right? So I like this field, but I don't know a lot about it. I want to do interior design, but I haven't really done it. Okay, go talk to people. Immerse yourself in that environment. So a bit of research also in the clarity phase to get enough information about the career path you want to venture into so you know it's the right one for you.
Gotcha.
And also right one from a feasibility perspective.
Of course.
It's one thing to know what you like and to want what you want, and there's completely another thing to go out in this tough job market where things are still done in a very archaic and dated way, and people who have 10, 15, 20 years of experience are not finding jobs, let alone someone who's trying to pivot and does not have all that experience. So then it really, and that's where network comes in, right? So if you build that network and you know the right people with the right opportunities, and you get to know about these opportunities before they're advertised, then you have a better chance.
That was fantastic. It was literally like an A to Z for anyone listening, guys. Now you know. You have no excuse. This is the process you need to go through to figure out what's that next step, whether you should stay in your career and so on. So what I liked, Samia, from the beginning is you started with the reality, because everything you said is great, but unless you take into account the reality of your financial situation, your responsibilities, the feasibility of this career, will this give you the life that you want? Figuring out, your core values, what your GPVs are, identifying maybe some paths that you'd like to take. So now we've gone through I figured out what I want to do. We've gone through this phase, put in all the work. One thing I think people don't consider is, and just even listening to you, I'm like, it's a lot of work. You have to be willing to put in that work, because all of the things you talked about these all might evolve over time, but you have to figure it out just for phase 2, for the next 2 or 3 years, like you said, that next block, and then things might change. Now, but a lot of people, I feel, aren't committed to putting in that work, or because of the situation, they don't have that cushion to start thinking about all these things. It's very easy for that to cloud your judgment and to not move forward. But let's say we've gone through all that work, we've done this process, now we have clarity. The next thing I look at is, okay, everyone says, that saying, finding a job is a job.
It is.
And the question I start to think about is, I'm like, okay, when I'm looking now for this new job, what's the approach I should be taking? Because I've spoken to career coaches on my podcast before. Everyone has a different approach. The typical one that I think is still very prevalent today is the Unabomber approach. Just throw spaghetti at a wall with anything that has that title, and whatever comes up, I'll pursue. And then there's the more refined approach, which is I'll identify an industry, pick like 5 to 6 companies, start connecting with people and doing that. This one takes a lot more time, though, which is why I think that process is still the one that people are still falling into. So walk us through the next phase of now I'm looking for a job.
So I like to work with a very methodical, structured, strategic approach, and I tell people, I call it a spray and pray strategy, that you're spraying your CV everywhere,
Thank you very much.
hoping that it's going to stick somewhere, and praying that it's going to work. If you are for everyone, you are for no one. It's as simple as that. I come from a marketing background. You have to hone in exactly on your target industry, target job role, and come up with a list of at least 10 to 15 target organizations that you would like to work for. And then from there, you work your way to finding and knowing people in those companies. When I say this to people, their eyes pop wide open. Like, I don't know a single person in any of these 10 companies.
Exactly, yeah.
Fine, first they're like, I don't even know the 10 companies. Okay, we get there. Okay, now you have your 10 companies. I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone who knows anyone. And then we break it down. When we break it down, even if they start with one person who might know someone and through that they will get to them, that's a start. And you build from there. So we really work on a very methodical, broken down, it's like Excel sheets and all of this plan, detailed, granular plan of networking. Because if you're not going to find those people in the companies you want to work for, then how are you going to get your foot in there? Every job application on LinkedIn gets 2,000 CVs in 2 days. Nobody opens your CV. Nobody's opening your CV, let alone seeing it. And that's why the chances of you landing an interview through that process is 3%. 3%. Of you landing 3%. The first interview, not even getting the job.
Wow.
So it's that process, and it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It puts a lot of, let's say, disappointment into the process, a lot of like really slogging, for the job seeker, because also it's not working for people who are hiring, because they are not also going through this process. They're not going to look through 2,000 CVs, even through an ATS and a software and screen and do interviews with 15 people. They're going to ask around, word of mouth, referral, who knows who, okay, HR, okay, help me connect. And so if they're doing that, where are you in the equation? Are you among those people that are being talked about when they're looking around? And usually when the looking around happens, it's internal, right, in the organization.
Exactly,
so if you know someone in there, and they don't have to be your, let's say, potential manager. They don't even have to be in HR. Anywhere you know someone, they will find out and they will let you know. They will connect you to the right person. So what I say is you have to, like mind mapping, you have to build a web of people by knowing one person. So let's say somebody introduced you to somebody in an organization, irrelevant, no problem. You have a chat with them and then you ask them, is there someone you know in the company who is in this department? Or is there someone you know that I should talk to? Now that they know about who you are, what you do, what you're looking for, they can direct you to the right person. It's a long journey, takes a lot of time and effort, but then you get there. So every person is opening a door at least to one more person, and that's how you start building your web of relevant connections.
No, 100%. So the networking part is, and how you go about the job, the methodical approach that you take to finding a job, I think is so important. So I'm just reflecting on my career. So when I was living and working in Amsterdam, when I applied for a job, it would, because I was doing, I'm gonna be honest, I was a spray and pray guy. I'm not gonna lie. So, but the thing I liked there was, compared to maybe the job market here, is there, I think maybe it's just a culture thing, the environment. If I got a no, like I'm getting a no like tomorrow. So like, on a personal level, as the guy looking for the job, I'm like, okay, I'm not happy about it, but it's one less thing I need to think about. I think here, what I hear a lot of the time is there's a long lead process between, even if I get selected for the interview and like the onboarding process, there's a lot of time that goes into that, which adds just another layer of difficulty to this transition phase that you're going into. But let's say we've gone down the methodical approach. We've identified the people we need to connect with and how we're going to get to that key decision maker in the company, which we hope gets our CV. Now I'm going into the interview. One of the things you talked about was that it's the interview not only is a two-way street, which we forget, it's the interviewee is also it's our job to interview the interviewer, to ask them questions like, one of the ones I loved was, when did this role become available? Did someone leave? Or did someone stay? How long have you been here? And like, what do you like? And to ask questions throughout the interview, not just leave it to the end. But I think when we go into interviews, especially, I think there's a mindset issue here. We go in from a place of weakness, not strength.
Absolutely.
I go in like, because I want this thing from you, I'm kind of coming, a little bit more closed and not as confident because I need this thing. And there's responsibilities and stuff. So you can't blame anyone for feeling that way. But if you can go in using your approach as, I'm here to have a conversation with a person to see if I even want to.
Exactly.
That switch from I need this to do I even want this is everything. But how do you train people, I guess, to go into interviews with a more confident, equal footing kind of mindset?
Very well said. So it's both. So you have to train them on like preparation of what it takes to answer all of those questions, behavioral questions, technical questions, really mining all their best work, best achievements, and then saying them in a very concise, compelling, structured way. So a lot of preparation, what it does, it automatically removes a little bit of fear and nerves, because you know what you're going to say. You've rehearsed it, you've practiced it, you've sent voice notes to yourself, you've stood in front of the mirror and done all of that. So muscle memory. And then a lot of mindset related tips like the ones you just mentioned, and mindset and mindfulness exercises that we do 3 days before, 2 days before. Sometimes they're calling me while they're driving to the interview, sometimes 2 minutes, or they're making me wait 5 minutes. I don't know. What if my voice starts shaking? What if my palms are sweaty? All of that. And then a lot of it is like deep breathing. Different people have different things that work for them, right? Somebody who really loves to dance, I tell them, make sure you play a really, peppy, loud song and dance it out. So all of your nerves and, you're moving and there's energy in your body, and then you go. Different things. Visualization is a great tool. So visualize the outcome of the interview as if the interview went really well, and we go down to every single detail. The color of the wall, how are the lights, what does the window look like, what are you wearing, how did you show up there, what is the interviewer like. So you're really creating an image of the future, and then you will be manifesting it, and it will likely happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
The planning ahead aspect is something I find very interesting. So the guest I spoke to recently was talking about how, so she was a world champion athlete, and I was asking her about, you have that goal. For example, her goal was to become world champion, and then she didn't know what she was going to do next. And in our case, sometimes we maybe dedicate so much time into an interview, into a business, into something. You're so focused on the thing, you forget to plan for what happens after. And I think this kind of work, to do it in advance, will help you have more clarity on the direction you're going to go, whether it goes right or wrong afterwards. But also mentally, you go in much more settled, prepared. And you touched on, just coming back to the CVs for a second, you've said that CVs are still very archaic, very traditional, like even the way they're done and so on. And networking is how, as you said, 80% of people find jobs through network and referrals. So I had a guest on my podcast years ago, and she talks about the hidden job market. And I think that is what speaks to that statistic, because, but let's say, okay, there's a hidden job market. It's not on LinkedIn. How?
It is on LinkedIn, though. Not in the form of jobs, in the form of people.
Exactly.
That you need to reach out and imagine before LinkedIn, you didn't have that. You didn't know who works where, what is their profile like, what did they do before. Imagine sometimes you talk to a person thinking their current company is relevant, but their previous companies and their prior experience is so relevant, and you get so much out of it.
Absolutely.
There's a whole database there.
Exactly.
Use it.
Yeah. So before we get on to LinkedIn, because I do want to talk about LinkedIn, I think it's very powerful. The CV aspect. So if CVs are still stuck in, the old days, but for some reason there still is a relevance for them today, how do I, from your perspective, I came to him like, Samia, I want to craft the best CV that I can, relevant to where the market and the industry or where jobs are now. How would you break that down for me? How should it be laid out? Should I have my picture? Should I not? Should it be... Should I have, let's say I have 10 years of experience, should it be like 2 pages? Or all these things are things I think about, because now I have my own, like I'm running my own business. But sometimes I do think, I'm like, man, if I had to go write a CV again, like what would I put now?
Yeah. So general rule of thumb, if you have more than 10 years of experience, then 2 pages, otherwise 1 page. Anything less than 10, the shorter the better. It's like nobody has time. Recruiters spend 6 seconds on your CV, 6 seconds. So they'll only see the very top, and and
just
you have
6 seconds.
Just 6 seconds.
So
and if they are interested after 6 seconds and you really catch their eye, then of course they're gonna look through more. That's why upfront you want to make everything clear. Along with your name, you want to have the headline of either the job title that you're looking for, or a headline that defines what you do or who you are. Let's say artificial intelligence specialist. So that's not really a job title, but it's your functional skill, and that's what you want to do. Then what people still, I find it like ironic in this day and age, people still have an objective, which is very like, I want to work in your esteemed and prestigious organization and blah, blah, blah. Cut out all the fluff. Cut it out. Nobody needs to read that. Just mention in a summary 3 to 4 lines, summarizing like an executive summary, like those 3-4 lines that you would write on on LinkedIn as well, of who you are and what you do and what's the job you're looking for. So 10 years of experience, artificial intelligence expert, worked in Middle East and African markets, then double click on what that AI expert does. So I do coding, I do this, that. I'm looking for a job in cybersecurity within the tech industry. That's it. So that is what they will read, and then if they're interested, they're going to read further. And then, of course, you mention your skills. CVs have to be based on keywords. You have to design a CV specific to every single job,
sure.
Depending on the keywords that are in every job description of the company you're applying to. So make it less wordy, more bullet points. In the bullet points of your experience, make sure you highlight achievements and not job responsibilities. It should not read like, supposed to make weekly reports and report on this data. No. How many reports did you? Yeah, people copy paste sometimes the job responsibilities.
Yeah.
So achievements. Think of your best achievements. Make sure they are quantified. You are mentioning what exactly you did and the impact on business and the results achieved.
Thank you. That's really, really great advice. Especially the one that really caught me was the objective one, because I've been trained, over the years in CDs. Oh, your company is amazing. I would be a great fit, and we would vibe, and but. Like you said, I think, and what I've been learning speaking to communication people on my podcast and here as well, is shorter, more concise is always more impactful and is going to deliver better. It's something that I struggle with and I'm trying to actively improve, whether it's by text, whether it's in speaking. Now, you've said before we get into that, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is, for me, has always been, I've been posting about my podcast on LinkedIn for 5 years. So by now, everyone knows, like, whether they love me or hate me, they're like, this guy just talks about podcasting, he just posts podcasts, so he's the podcast guy. I tell people that out of all the platforms for your career, for business opportunities, for jobs, that's where you should be investing your time. Because especially, I'd say, over the last 3-4 months, I've really been putting in the time and being active and so on. You really start to see results. People start reaching out like, hey, I want to be on your show. Hey, this is what you do. Can you help us launch? Like, business comes up. And so and LinkedIn, though, is still, there was a statistic that only 1% of the, I think, 3-4 billion people on LinkedIn are active and posting and engaging consistently. So your margin for success is massive, and 99% of people aren't doing it. So I think that should be where you should be putting effort during everything you've talked about on the when you're in your corporate job, be banging it out on LinkedIn. That's where it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
That sets you up for round 2.
And why do you think people don't do that? Is it, let's say we remove lack of time as one of the reasons, ignore that. What else could it be a reason?
Either a lot of times people say like, oh, I don't know what to post, or they'll say, I commented, or they'll put in some effort. Maybe they'll try it for a little bit, but they're not seeing much returns on it. So they're like, this, it doesn't work. It's just there. And I don't think LinkedIn, I had a LinkedIn expert on the podcast a month ago. So she's like, think of LinkedIn. LinkedIn's your landing page. Your personal brand landing page. So when you go to Samia's profile, you go to my profile, you should get a specific image on who we are, what we do, the level of professionalism we have before you even get into like experience and offers. Just that first part. And I think that's a part that people neglect a lot. They don't understand how important that could be for so many things.
Exactly. So these are all the reasons. And one more reason is people don't want to put themselves out there. So they are shy. Especially because LinkedIn has got this rep of like, people are gloating and like,
It's humble brag for me. It's a humble brag platform. Not gonna lie. And I play that game too, by the way. So I have to be honest.
Everybody does. Again, the way I tell people is you don't have to do what you dislike and what is cringe for you. You have to do what you find authentic and meaningful.
Yeah.
So if you're opening your newsfeed and it's like, oh, I got this certification and oh my God, I'm so stoked to be going to here or whatever, don't do that. You can make content and design content in terms of what is true to who you are, as long as you are adding value and providing value to the reader.
Sure.
Now, that takes time, it takes effort, it requires some thought, and it doesn't come naturally to people, so they shy away from it. But definitely, I think LinkedIn also, in terms of a platform that provides the reach and the algorithm that still is not trying to hide your content and not show it to 3 people unless you pay an ad, is good that way. That, depending on the engagement and the quality of your content, and now they are boosting videos a lot, which is great, they are actually going to show your content to relevant people and the people you're connecting with and engaging with, and even your friends that you're not connected with, their content are going to show on your feed.
Exactly.
Second degree connections, right? So it's great, yeah.
Yeah. And so we've talked about the step 1 of like finding our why. We've talked about the work we have to do with the criteria and the GPVs and how to do that. We've talked about transitioning into, your next job, how to approach an interview. We've talked about how to do our CVs. We've talked about LinkedIn. Now, to round off, our conversation with just a couple more questions, the next, we've talked about the now, and now I wanted to just touch on moving forward. So you've said by 2050, I think we're moving into more of a gig economy. So I think you said Gen Z will have over 5 different careers over their lifetime, and millennials will have about 12. So that even when I heard that, I was like, wow, like that's a lot. That's a lot of, that's like what we've talked about today for like one transition, that's like 12 of those, or that's like 5 of those.
Yeah.
So if this is where we're moving, and we're moving into a world where you're not going to you'll be doing multiple things at once, that seems to be where everything is shifting. I think COVID really did that. It showed people that, my skill that I use at work can be used in so many different other areas. And I think that just has been snowballing over the last couple of years. But as we move with this, you've talked about it, you need to be upskilling to fit into this new world, this new narrative, this new way that people are going to be working together. So if I want to upskill to future-proof myself for what's coming up over these next, 20 years, what do you think are like the key skills I should be focusing on that will carry me through those ebbs and flows as time goes on?
So I think let's divide the skills into technical and behavioral, right? So in terms of technical skills, of course, it's tech. All of tech. So if you are a coder or you're into cybersecurity, machine learning, AI, generative AI, any of that, you will find a lot more opportunities for you in the traditional corporate world, as well as what we call portfolio careers. If you want to start your own gig or freelance or, do part-time fractional kind of work. Now, any other technical field, again, depending on the demand and depending on where you're at, is still relevant and important. It's just a matter of how the traditional jobs are going to move more to fractional jobs. Because you can only do gigs. So let's say we keep aside the point of launching your own business. Right? So we're talking about launching your own practice. So let's say I take my example. I have a portfolio career whereby I work, it's both B2C and B2B. I work with individuals one-to-one for career and leadership coaching, and I work with a bunch of organizations, government, private, SME, startups, all of it, which is fractional work because it could be 2 days of workshop or 6 months of consulting, all of that. And I have online courses and masterclasses, which is another source of passive income. And what else do I do? Revenue generating only. I do a lot more. I do trading as well on the side. So that's my own thing, which is not relevant. But these are all different skill set, right? So you have to see that in your field, let's say you're in oil and gas or you're a lawyer, how is your field evolving when it comes to portfolio careers? Is still 90 to 95% of your field and the skills required in your field stuck in the corporate world in the form of a full-time job or not? For instance, with COVID, what we've seen as companies have tried to come up with cost efficiencies, they have outsourced and delegated a lot of tech work outside to contractual staff, sometimes outside the country, in other parts of the world, to have cost efficiencies, right? So if you are in this field, do you want to take up a gig which takes up, let's say, 4 or 5 hours, and it's a part-time gig, because that is one third of your portfolio career. You do 1/3 with something else, 1/3 with something else. So I would say the starting point is, in your line of work, whatever skill set in your industry and job role you have, try to figure out and map the landscape of where your industry and field is right now, and where you foresee it's going to be in the next 5-10 years, and wherever you foresee it's going to be, lead the way and try to make it go there. So for instance, content creators, all of your vloggers and bloggers and people who get a lot of freelance work, who are on Fiverr and Upwork, are by default having portfolio careers, or it's easy for them because that market of outsourcing these kind of things, be it web design, photography, interior design, architecture, has moved there. So yeah.
That's really, really great advice. I think I like how you split it up between the technical aspect and, you know, more of the personal aspect. And I think the time factor is very important. Will this job require, as time goes on, us to still be full-time to, you know, advance in that line of work? Or will things, because things are becoming a lot more outsourced right now. You know, you have like your business, but then you might have like an agency that does this for you, or an agency that does that, or like you have contractors for certain projects.
Yep.
The need to have as many full-time isn't what it used to be, you know? And people now don't need offices. Everyone's like, oh, COVID, the whole world can work remote. Why do we need offices?
They're going back to offices.
I know. Which
5 days a week.
Which I know the only argument people have is this, and I have a very strong stance on this. The argument people have is, oh yeah, you know, because there's to build connection and foster team and all that. That I understand. But in my opinion, that's just the nice packaging I'm saying behind a completely illogical thought process. And this is why. Because maybe back in the day you had, like, if people have this mindset, like, I want everyone to be in the office, we didn't have anything to compare. We didn't have a good case study to compare it to. Then COVID happened and the whole world shut down for 2 years. And life went on, and jobs went on. Yes, there were changes and stuff, but it completely disproved that. So for me, my personal view, I'm like, I see no reason for the need to be in the office. If you want to, that's fine. And what I've noticed these days, people seem to like, everyone's different, but the hybrid seems to be the middle ground that everyone's falling into.
Yeah. So I fully agree with you.
Yes.
What has happened is people, because companies have invested a lot of money into their real estate and their offices and stuff, and also there's lack of trust. So they don't fully trust that you are working from home, and they want to make sure that, you know, okay, I understand if you, there are different jobs and jobs require FaceTime. There's the whole bit of, you know, connecting with teams and brainstorming, working together. Tell me, what exactly are your initiatives that you are going to launch with people once they come back? If you're saying after working from home for this long, just show up and be there without any proactive initiative or strategy that I have in place to make sure that engagement happens, then it's not going to happen. They're going to be still working in their silos. So my question to HR is, it's been 5 years since COVID happened. You have data of 5 years. If in 5 years you still cannot work out what job roles and what functions in your company require what kind of FaceTime, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, full-time, remote, then what are you doing? What are you doing?
No,
it's a long time to figure that out. So it's not one size fit all. You cannot say everybody, 100% of the organization will work remotely forever, or everybody has to come 5 days a week for these many hours. No, there has to be a middle ground, and it has to be customized and tailored to the department functional job role needs. Salespeople, yes, more FaceTime, more relationship building. Tech people, do your coding at home or wherever you want to.
Exactly. I love what you said, that what's the initiative? You know, if you want to bring me back into the office for 5 days a week, why? You know, what are you going to add to make it more engaging for me, to make me, maybe I'll learn more, there's new programs and stuff.
Because also there's behavior change, right? People
Well, exactly,
who've now been working remotely for 2 years, what incentive are you giving them? So let me give you research.
Yeah, please.
Millennials and Gen Z, there's a research done by Deloitte every year on these people and of course their workplace habits and stuff. Last year's research said that Millennial and Gen Z both, 75% of them said that if our employer asks us to come back to work full time, we'll quit the job. 75%.
Wow. My kind of people, I like it.
Exactly. It has to make sense, you know?
Yeah, because you said, and the top 5 reasons that millennials and Gen Zs are now looking for in transitioning to work, just to round off our conversation, is those 2 things, work-life balance and flexibility. Now, the flexibility is what we've just discussed, but work-life balance, Samia, it's such a tricky subject. Everyone has a different perspective on it. I can say, honestly, when I was living and working in Amsterdam, I truly had work-life balance. I would come in at 8, and then once I left at 5, my laptop was closed, and my manager would tell me, you don't open this, tomorrow morning you come in, you kill it for these 8 hours, and you stop. So I've experienced that, what it actually feels like. At the same time, I think it's different around the world. And I think we need a new definition of work-life balance. So how do you define a work-life balance? Is it
I don't like that term.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. I was saying,
my new definition. So, and it's been going around. I mean, it's not coined by me, but I resonate more with work-life integration, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So work-life balance, or in the way you're saying, like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., this boundary does not work because guess what? You're connected 24/7. So it's not like, 4 p.m. you're going to leave and automatically the emails will stop coming, the messages will stop coming. There's no Slack channel anymore. So when we didn't have tech and we had to put our head down and work for 8 hours a day, fine, those boundaries made sense, and hence the balance that, okay, now work stops and life begins. Now it's integrated and your work and life go together hand in hand. So there might be days where you have to pull an all-nighter to do something and you're really focused and invested and you're loving it and you've worked 15 hours that day, and the next day you take it a bit easy and you do 3 hours, and that's okay. Having that flexibility where your management trusts you with deliverables and KPIs that you are delivering on versus counting the number of hours is where the balance lies. Even our body, the day you push yourself more and you've done a strength training and a cardio and this workout, the next day you're going to relax and take it easy. So you can't be like a machine that you're going on and on and on 24/7 and killing yourself, which is unfortunately the culture in a lot of companies out here. And not having a life, because you can't postpone your life. You can't postpone your groceries for more than 2 days. You won't have anything in the fridge then. You need time to do these life chores as well.
100%.
So work-life integration, my thoughts on this is, if you find a career and if you find work that really feels true to who you are, it leverages your strengths, your passions, your values, it will not feel like work.
Yeah.
And yes, finding that 100% of the time, even in my line of work and with what I do, which is what I love, 100% doesn't happen. So you have to adjust your expectations. There will be projects which will feel like a drag, and that's okay. If you're getting it 60 to 70% of the time, even that's a blessing.
Yeah.
And that fuels you, recharges you, powers you up to then do other things and then pull those all-nighters or do other things that you don't like as much.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I think that definition really resonates with me. And what I appreciate throughout our conversations today, Samia, is you've talked about the things that are useful, but what I like is the messages behind what you're saying is always subtracted from a sense of reality. And what we've talked about today, reality, has been at the core of every single one of those areas that we talked about, because it's something we do have to consider. Everything else is also true, but you need to it's not just that, you need to bring this into it. So to summarize on the work integration, that it's, yes, I might be able to craft it in a way, but to have an expectation that it's going to be perfect and exactly how I want it with my time, that's not reasonable. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. Samia, the way we like to end every podcast, and the mission with this podcast is, we want to showcase that success comes in many forms and learning never stops. And I've learned, at least from my life and over the course of people's careers, you're always learning and, different things at different seasons. But I feel personally there's something you learn at some point that really I call it the game changer learning, that you can never you'll never be the same person again. You'll never see the world the same thing again. So if you reflect on your journey and your career, what was that learning for you?
That learning is closely tied to my definition of success. And you said that word success and immediately it popped up for me. So growing up, success looked like having a great fancy job, earning a lot of money, multinational, all of it, which I gained. And then when that definition evolved and everything collapsed, because this is what you're taught, benchmarking your success with external factors and society and all of these materialistic things, where success is deeply, deeply internal. When I was making the most money I've ever made in my life in that job, and I was miserable. When I had everything that ticks the box of cultural conditioning and society expectations, and I was miserable. So for me, the biggest learning of my life is to discover that my personal definition of success is living a life aligned to my values. And it's the hardest thing on the planet to do because one, to discover what those values are, and then to stay true to them. Staying true to them, I'll give you an example. My top 2 values, and again, Brené Brown tells you that don't be happy with 5. 5 is way too many, top 2. Because top 2 really helps you be choiceful on, okay, this is it. For me, number 1 is faith, number 2 is courage. And especially in the last 8 years since I quit my corporate job and everything that has happened afterwards, I have upheld these values in every single decision, life and work that I've taken, to the point that I decided to walk away from a marriage that was not working for me based on faith and courage, when all the cultural factors and the checklist was ticking the box. So it requires a lot of courage. It requires for you to believe in yourself, believe in God, universe, whatever you believe in. But this for me is success because I am at peace with myself and with the life I'm living every single day.
I love that message because I was resonating with your story a lot over the last 2 years. I've been really swimming in personal development and trying to figure out Khalid and everything we've talked about today. And I think what my definition is, how you have that voice in the back of your head that will tell you like, hey, take today off, or you don't have to do it. If you can, my goal or my mission is, if I can, when it's all said and done at the end of my life, be like, I look at the scoreboard, did I beat that voice more than it beat me? For me, that's a pretty good life. And I'm at peace with myself. And when you, at least what I've learned is when you live true those values, whatever your values are, when you put your head down at night and you go to sleep, there's a calmness or like a peace. You're like, like that, I feel good. Doesn't mean everything's going well in my life, but between me and myself, we're in a good place. Samia, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been such a fun conversation. So many things I resonated with you about. And this has been a masterclass in just finding yourself, career, transitions. Like, we've given people a step-by-step process to move into whatever season they are now, whether you're in corporate, in a business, at a startup, to move on to that next phase. And thank you for the work you're doing. And yeah, I've absolutely loved the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as much as you did. It was a very thought-provoking, fun, very conversational and fluid, just how I like it. So thank you for having me.
The pleasure is. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time. Take care.